Parts of the United States, including the state of New Hampshire, have been experiencing drought conditions. Concord General Services has been proactively monitoring the drought effects in Concord and has taken action to decrease the community's water consumption. But what is a drought? In simple terms, a drought is an extended period of diminished precipitation. Droughts have three characteristics: duration, areal extent, and degree of severity. In 1872, the city of Concord stepped into the municipal water business and created Contoocook Lake as the community's water supply by combining Long Pond and Forge Pond. It has a relatively small watershed of just 3.8 square miles and yet can generate a safe yield of 2.5 million gallons of water a day. It also serves as a reservoir, and we can store up to 1.3 billion gallons of water. In this enlarged image of Contoocook Lake, you can see the lake is narrow near the lower right-hand corner. This is where Concord's water treatment plant and the water intake are located, on the shallower end. This is where Forge Pond used to be, while Long Pond used to be in the upper left part of the map in the deeper section. In 1963, Concord experienced a drought that dropped water levels 10 feet below average. The city of Concord reached out to St. Paul's School to create a water source from Turkey Pond. A pipeline, as shown as the red line on the map, was built above ground between Turkey Pond and Contoocook Lake to pump water to meet the city's water demands. An agreement was made with the school to allow a transfer of 3 million gallons a day through 1965. The drought of the early 60s is noted as the drought of record and is the most significant drought Concord has experienced since weather records have been maintained. Shortly after came the drought of the 1970s. The picture on the left is the shallow end of the lake just before the intake where there was no water. And the picture on the right was a deeper section of the lake set up with a temporary pump station to transfer water to the water treatment plant. One of the most significant actions the city has taken with water resources since creating Contoocook Lake over 100 years ago was building a pump station on Contoocook River to transfer water to the lake. This pump station can draw up to 7.5 million gallons of water a day and has increased our safe yield to 5.7 million gallons a day, more than doubling the safe yield. Water supplies in the Northeast have been historically developed from lakes and reservoirs. It wasn't until the 80s, after communities had invested funds through the Clean Water Act to restore the water quality of our region's rivers, that we were able to also rely upon those water resources for supply. As we look for future water supplies to meet our growing demands, rivers will have a greater role. The drainage area that supports Contoocook Lake is 3.8 square miles. Connecting to the Contoocook watershed expanded that drainage area to 764 square miles. The Contoocook watershed is principally located in the southwestern part of New Hampshire, while extreme drought conditions for this year occurred in the southeastern parts of the state. So this resource location helped. In reserve is the Pembroke Wellfield, a groundwater resource adjacent to the Contoocook River. This is located in Pembroke to the right of the Steeplegate Mall. This was developed to have 1.1 million gallons of water a day on standby. We don't use it on a daily basis, but it's available for use if necessary. As mentioned, droughts have a specific duration. This drought started last year. But to just take a look at this year, this graph shows the precipitation levels in Concord, New Hampshire. This shows the shortfall of precipitation over 2016. The actual year-to-date precipitation received was well matched with the average in March, but as time continued to develop, our precipitation deficit continued to grow. Precipitation improved in October, but we're still experiencing a shortfall of 7.54 inches through the end of December. Now that we are in the winter season, it's important to keep in mind that we measure precipitation as a liquid. 10 inches of snow is really about an inch of rain. The drought isn't over. It's going to take a while for us to recover. So, how did the drought of 2016 develop? Concord is better positioned than the communities to the southeast of us where significant drought conditions first began to appear. Intensity levels are indicated as yellow being abnormally dry, beige being moderate drought, orange indicating severe drought, and red as extreme drought. On August 16th, the state experienced drought mostly in the southeastern areas, outside of our water resource areas. It grew in September and intensified in the southeastern areas. Extreme conditions started to have an impact on Merrimack County. As time progressed, the areal extent of the drought grew. By late September, severe conditions and extreme conditions really amplified. In December, the extreme drought started to recede a bit, but now more of the state is experiencing various levels of drought condition, reflecting the impact of the continued duration of dry weather. Presently, the drought conditions in the watersheds that support our water supply have moderated and currently are not intensifying. This graph demonstrates how much water Concord customers use on average. In blue is the average of the past 10 years, while red is just this year. We use roughly 4 million gallons of water a day. Contoocook Lake has the capacity to produce about half of that. So Contoocook Lake by itself is not our principal water supply. It's Contoocook Lake and the Contoocook River. Our peak demand this year pushed to 6 million gallons of water a day in July. We accomplished meeting the community's needs by transferring water from the Contoocook River. This graph shows transfers from the river since 1990. This year was a record-setting year for us for transferring water from the Contoocook River to Contoocook Lake, and it's not the record we want to set. We transferred over 1 billion gallons of water from the Contoocook River, while our storage capability of Contoocook Lake is 1.3 billion gallons of water. So, we moved an incredible amount of water to meet the community's needs. We rely very heavily on the Contoocook River, much more than Contoocook Lake. Looking back through 1990, you really only see 2 other years going over the 600,000 gallon threshold. For the most part, we rely on transferring about 400 million gallons on an average year. The community did an amazing job to reduce their water consumption. Believing that our community would appropriately respond, we introduced a voluntary water restriction in September. It was voluntary because it was the appropriate thing for people to do, and unlike communities to our southeast, there wasn't an immediate need to have a mandatory water ban. Much of our watershed had not yet been significantly impacted for a period of time. We asked people to stop their outdoor water use and to look at short-term strategies of what they could do in their own homes to mitigate and reduce their water demand. As far as communicating updates on the drought conditions and about the voluntary water ban, we consistently use as many platforms as possible. We started on the City of Concord's website with news flashes, web page updates, and a homepage spotlight. We continue with press releases to the Concord Monitor, Concord Insider, Concord Patch, and New Hampshire One News. Newsletters were issued, such as the City Manager's Newsletter, the General Gazette, and In Town Concord. We use social media, such as Facebook, Twitter, and Google+, to engage with the community on this issue. Variable message boards were also implemented on the streets, asking the community to reduce outdoor water use. And customers with irrigation accounts were contacted directly with a letter requesting to refrain from lawn irrigation. We also coordinated with our large water users, such as schools, to implement better water use practices. So we really reached out, and the community responded very positively to reducing their water use. As we go forward, we need to look at long-term and more permanent conservation strategies. This is an opportunity for us all to learn from our past. In 1963, we were fortunate St. Paul's School helped us out with Turkey Pond. In 1970, the temporary pump station was also a reactive response that was created to bail us out. We have a better alternative in place now with Contoocook River, but if you look at our water transfer graph, our ability to develop water is starting to get close to our current demands. It's not a crisis level, but our demand is beginning to exceed what we can supply on a sustained basis. So, we need to be proactive and look at permanent, long-term conservation strategies going forward. We recommend upgrading fixtures and households to water-sense label products to save water and energy. Visit www.concordnh.gov/conservation to learn more. In summary, water is a limited resource. In the East Coast, we never think of running out of water. But in fact, as a community, we're going to start to approach our current limit as our population and community grows. As a community, we were very responsive to short-term strategies, but now we must move towards long-term techniques to conserve. On a per capita basis, Concord consumes on average 85 gallons of water a day per person. However, the average water consumption is about 75 gallons per capita per day. Here, we want to be average. So going forward, we should look to not just short-term solutions like turning off irrigation systems in a drought, but also long-term solutions as a community to drive 85 gallons down to 75 gallons. Find more ways to conserve water by visiting our webpage at www.concordnh.gov/conservation.